Okay, so
How long is it going to take?
dear Ms. Zhang, as you are aware from our past communications, this office represents the Sunset Empire Park and Recreation District. If you are represented by an attorney, please provide a copy of this letter to that person so he or she may contact me directly. I am in receipt of an email you sent today at 10:46 a.m. to Erica Marshall, who is one of the 5 volunteer, she says elected, but that's not true. She's an appointed board member for the district. The email was copied to the following additional persons: C. Delafield at mercycorps.org, Miss Marshall's personal employer, and the following media representatives: K. Hefner at kgw.com, N. Crombie at Oregonian.com, K. Williams at Oregonian.com, and B. Nakamura at Oregonian.com. In your email, you reiterate various allegations and demands that you have repeatedly raised with district staff, the district board, government agencies, and members of the local community since 2017. As directed by this office and by the district's insurer, your original allegations of misconduct by an off duty district employee were promptly and thoroughly investigated at the time you first raised them, and the results of the investigation were shared with you. Since the original cease and desist letter from this office dated December 10, 2018, you have been notified several times that neither the district nor law enforcement have been able to substantiate the truth of your allegations, despite his incriminating statements, which they refuse to acknowledge. That's my aside. That the matter was closed and that your continued efforts to seek redress were harassing and often slanderous and libelous. Today's email directed to Ms. Marshall, her employer, and various news outlets is further evidence of harassment. This time directed specifically at one of the district's elected officials. She's not been elected yet. She's up for election for the first time. But Eileen doesn't know that. Eileen Eakins wrote this. Ms. Marshall's personal employment has nothing whatever to do with SEPRD or the decisions of the district board or the conduct of its staff. Singling out any board member personally and locating and contacting her personal employer is clear evidence of continuing harassment that rises to the level of stalking. Making unsubstantiated allegations against Ms. Marshall, her employer, and employees of SEPRD is clear evidence of libel. It's almost over, Katie. Demand is hereby made that you or anyone acting on your behalf immediately cease and desist defaming the SEPRD and harassing its board members and staff either in person, by mail, or email, or on social media. Failure to comply will result in the district and or any of the persons you have targeted for harassment to report your conduct to law enforcement and seek a stalking protective order from a court of law. Sincerely, Eileen G. Eakins. Copy to Skylar Archibald, Executive Director. And this is from Lake Oswego, which is coincidentally where the police were covering up the Mercy Corps rapist. So the fact that the incest rapist of 20 years for Mercy Corps was outed by the media, and this woman who works for Mercy Corps, which was founded by a child rapist, is now working for the organization of the man who sexually attacked me, seemed to be maybe a correlation, possibly good, possibly negative. Maybe she's going to be on the side of victims, or maybe she's going to be on the side of bullying survivors. And at this point, it looks like the Seaside police officer who called to confirm that I have received my cease and desist was like, oh, we know you. We understand how you communicate. And it just seemed like, well, that's not, a police officer's job is not to bully a survivor of a crime. It's actually the opposite. It's to investigate a crime. So it's kind of creepy that the park district is trying to use, but his standpoint is like, well, she was frightened. And I'm like, well, as well she should be. She's surrounded by a bunch of people that are protecting a sexual predator. That's hella frightening. I totally agree. And in a way, I'm like, thanks for calling the police, because if we got enough eyes on it with a law enforcement mentality who are against sexual abuse, against discrimination, and against harassment, it's just it's really sad that this community is this low down in the dumps in terms of survivors and the future, because what is actually happening at Mercy Corps is that some of the employees surrounded the victim, embraced her, supported her, demanded a resignation. They demanded an opening of the files, an investigation, and equity and compliance. And that's what is not happening at Sunset Empire Park and Rec. So in a way, if Erica Marshall is aware of how Mercy Corps navigated trying to give some respect to the victim after this terrible misconduct, they even issued apologies. And I think Skylar could follow Mercy Corps' lead and issue an apology to me for all of his harassment and like sending me nasty letters and circling me. So I guess in a way, I always feel better when I get an Eileen. I literally forgot that she threatened me 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. Like, I forgot. And because they are having open debates and citizens submit questions, they're like, oh, citizens submit questions unless you're marrying. And I'm like, that's so creepy. 2021. This is where we are, folks. We might be as well be 1921 or 1821. This was so out of date. And it's not survivor-centered, which I learned on Mercy Corps sexual abuse handling. They want to center the survivor, not center the perpetrator. Sunset Park in Recreation District is centering the perpetrator. Mercy Corps apologizes for not centering the survivor. So that's one of the new lingos that's going on. Whoops. And they didn't even respond to my previous email, so I wasn't expecting like them to come out with guns blazing. Like 4 days before the election, when they want to just like swindle the taxpayer for $6 million more. And so they're like, yeah, let's play target practice with Mary Ang. Let's call the cops on Mary Ang. And I'm like, like what? For snitching on your rapist or attempted rapist? Like, woo! Oh yes, and social media. They want to, like, and by the way, there shall be no more First Amendment for you. And normally, if you're trying to gag someone, you usually give them hush money. So, like, don't they know the rules of gagging abuse victims?